Let's now talk about colours. Now, colours have an important part to play in the choice of images and in the text, also in the layout designs and even the page elements that you use, be they buttons or navigation menus and things like that. A lot of people perhaps don't give as much thought to colours as they should as well. And again, we can use colours to leverage people's expectations, and we can even reinforce the message that we're trying to get across using colours too. So in this section, we're going to look at some important ideas for using colour effectively in your design. First thing, surprise, surprise, check your objectives. Don't just use colours arbitrarily for the sake of it. Do have a moment's thought for whether or not those colours support your business objectives. We'll get into how colours can affect the outcome of actions on your page in just a moment, but you need to make sure that you're setting up the right sort of theme and tone and emotion for your page. Pick a key colour theme and branch out. What this means is basically you need to start with an idea of what colours work for your site, and we'll talk more about that in a moment, and then build out subtle variations of that colour for your overall design themes. So for things like your backgrounds, for your panels, or sections of content, for callouts, for buttons, and even graphics. So for example, you might pick a photograph of somebody wearing a blue suit or a blue sweater if the overall site design colour theme is blue. And doing this, building or branching out this colour theme across your site can really help tie things together. It's a small thing, but it makes a big difference overall. Some simple tips now for how you can choose colour, and the first of which is a note on colour psychology. Now, if you go and Google colour psychology, you'll find a great deal written by many people on the subject. There's a whole lot of advice on what the individual colours mean and how they affect people's view of what your site's about or what your message is about. And let's just take a quick look over the page here at some examples of the sorts of things that these different colours can convey. So, for example, black typically can convey authority, power, stylish, timelessness, and even evil. Conversely, let's look at red. It's an obvious one, emotionally intense, love, extreme confrontation though as well. Equally, green there in the middle, nature, calming, refreshing, fertility, and so on. You can read the rest of those on the screen, but you get the idea. There are certain characteristics associated, or emotions, feelings associated with different colours, and so they can naturally have a bearing on the design of your site. And beyond that, you could also apply tone to convey a certain meaning. So, for example, if you wanted to play on somebody's fear on your website, for example, you were designing a site whose theme was, don't lose your house, or don't let this happen to you, then you'd likely be wanting to use darker, richer colours in conjunction with appropriate imagery. So perhaps clouds and brooding faces and so on. And you can sense there how those darker colours, those richer colours, and the imagery together will help create that sense of fear if you're trying to tap into people's fear with your sales page copy. Conversely, if you had a site about kiddies play groups, then obviously brighter, happy colours as a group of colours would be more appropriate, in conjunction maybe with smiling faces and things like that, balloons or whatever. So you can see very quickly with those very basic examples how colour and the depth or darkness of those colours, the tones, can actually help build that theme for your site. Colour picker tools. Now, I'm going to share with you a couple of neat tools for identifying the colours that you want to use so that you can then incorporate them throughout your website design. And the first tool that I'm going to start with is one called Thumbs Plus. When you design a website, if you have a starting graphic, let's say a header graphic, there's a neat way to pick up on the predominant colour theme used in that graphic so that you can then use that colour and branch out from that colour throughout your site. So you can pick up a touch of the same colour. Let me just illustrate the point. If I open, here's a header graphic that I'm browsing using Thumbs Plus. This is a small piece of software. It's a free trial, 30-day trial. And if I'm looking at a header graphic, this happens to be a header graphic that I've got on my machine here, my PC here. You can see that the overall feeling, the overall colour theme, I would say here predominantly is this sort of purpley blue colour. Okay, it's like a dark lilac colour. Now, if I wanted to pick that colour specifically, I can do so just by going to the View menu here, going to the View bar option, which calls up a little box you can see there on the left-hand side. And then as I move my mouse around, can you see that the actual color is being selected as I move? So if I move over the red t-shirt, I see the red color highlighted there in the view bar. If I go to the blue again, you can see there it is again. Now, above the blue box there in the view bar, you'll see a code that starts with the hash symbol. Now it reads hash 425C7D. Now that is what's called a hexadecimal reference number. It's a unique number, a unique code that relates to that individual color. And when you're designing a website, if you specify that color for certain elements on your web page, they're going to pick up that exact color when somebody views the page in a browser. So I could, for example, have that exact blue as the background to a certain panel or a testimonial box header section or something like that. And it's these touches, this repetition of these key color themes that tie the overall design together. That's the point here. So that's showing you one way that I can actually pick that particular color. I'm going to show you another way. If you don't want to use Thumbs Plus, that's fine. I'm going to go ahead and close that for now and leave this image open, but close the view bar. Now, the other tool I'm going to show you is called Slugs. It's not the most attractive name for a piece of software, I'll admit, and you can download Slugs from download.com. If you search for Slugs Color Picker, you'll find Slugs. It's a free piece of software, so you can download and install it. And when you do, you'll see this small application window that I've got on my screen right now. Now, it's a little difficult for me to demonstrate in this presentation because I know from past experience it tends to blank the screen if I'm doing a screen record at the same time as using it. However, I can show you that if you press the button here in the toolbar at the top called Screen Picker, you can then literally just click on an area of your screen with the cursor and it will set the hex ref, the same code that we just looked at a moment ago in the view bar of Thumbs Plus. It'll set that code to your clipboard. You can then simply paste it into Notepad and you've got the code right there that you can use in your onward design. So it's a little bit technical perhaps what I'm talking about, but I'm going to show you how that code, that unique code, is a useful starting point, not just so that you can actually match the color of the predominant color theme that you're using in, say, your header graphic, but because you can actually use it to help build out related colors, suggested complementary colors, using a couple of really powerful tools I'm going to show you. And what's more, these tools that I'm going to show you are free. So there's a great way that I'm going to help you get the colors right for your website. And they start by having a hex ref, that code that we've just looked at two ways of grabbing. Now, the first of the tools that I'm going to show you is a really, really neat tool. This is a tool that's going to help you select colors that work well together. And that's something that even talented designers sometimes really struggle with. The tool's going to let us input a starting color using the code that we were just talking about a short while ago. And then it's going to automatically come back with some recommended colors that go really well with the starting color. Okay? So these additional colors are going to help us make the panels, the buttons, the callouts, the headings, and the other details that we add to our web pages all work really well together. They'll tie in as though the site was designed by an absolute design genius, okay? Trust me, it works really well. The tool's called Kuler, K-U-L-E-R, and it's by Adobe, the folks that make Photoshop and a lot of other big applications. Okay, so if we go back to that image that we were looking at a short while ago in Thumbs Plus, okay, and we call up our little view bar to grab the hex ref code for this particular blue color. Okay, so I'm just going to make a note that it's hash 425C7D. All right, I've written that down on a sheet of paper alongside me right now. If I then head over to Kuler and we go to the Create link on the left-hand side menu here, you'll see that we get a rather technical looking screen with lots of numbers at the bottom. Don't panic, it's really simple. All we want to do is in the base color panel, that's the center panel in the middle of the screen here, which is currently red, where we see hex at the bottom, just type that reference, which was 425C7D, and then hit enter. And can you see what happened there? Cooler has basically selected that base color, the blue that we were looking at a moment ago, and it's given me some suggested colors either side that complement that one perfectly. Now that particular selection of colors is just one of a number that we can cycle through by clicking these links here. So I could go for monochromatic, I could go for triad. You see all different selections of colors based on particular sort of color themes that will complement our base color. All right, so I can go for pretty high contrast ones, complementary but highly contrasting ones. I can go for this triad option. The monochromatic is sort of really tonal variations, quite similar colors. But you can see how all of these colors perfectly complement each other. So if you haven't got a great eye for color, then this tool is absolutely worth its weight in gold, and it's free. So it's a great tip for you there. Cooler.adobe.com is the URL. That's http://cooler, KULER.adobe.com. I particularly like this selection here. So you can imagine having, quite boldly variating colors, but that complement each other perfectly. I don't know if I can call up that image there. Yes, I can. You can see how those images just tie in beautifully. They really do complement the base blue, and they would really work well with this particular design. So that's a great tip for you. Another tool that you could use is called HyperGURL. That's hyper, HYPER, GURL.com. And if you scroll down past the ads, you'll see there's another tool, and we can do the same thing here. We can type in our hexref with the hash symbol 425C7D, click the Use It button, and you can see it's selected the base URL, and it's given us some suggested colors once again. Okay, so another neat tool, and you've got the hex refs for each of those if you wanted to use those hex refs within your web design. And just dropping back to Cooler to show you where those hex refs are there, you can see they're at the bottom of the page for each of those too. So you could select those and use them in your website design application to get those exact colors and make everything look just great. So it's pretty cool. Okay, follow the header. Now, we used a header graphic there by design because it's generally a good idea, given that your header graphic is going to be something that appears on pretty much every one of your web pages. If you're going to choose one graphic to set the color theme for your web pages, then it makes sense that it's the header graphic. And as a bonus to this course, you have a session on creating a good header graphic using our X-Header software, which is free. And so you'll learn a bit more about header graphics in that too. Small touches, big difference. And basically, just don't feel that you have to flood the page with color in the same way that we're talking about. Don't overuse images. Don't have too many images. It's best to use small touches of color throughout your pages rather than mass blocks of color. It's the sort of less is more analogy there, really. Small touches, big difference.